Bearcat Blitz. We are into another edition of the show right here, coming off of another tough loss for Cincinnati against Iowa State. I'm your All Bearcats reporter, Russ Heltman, joined across the way by former UC wide receiver, 2005 to 2008 playing period, Dominick Goodman. UC football coming off a 30-10 loss, and we're here to pick up the pieces for a fourth straight game as you're checking out Bearcat Blitz on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you're catching podcasts. Checking us out visually on Talking Cats with Russ Heltman or watching us on Valley Sports Ohio. We cannot thank you all enough for making us your choice for Bearcats audio and visual coverage following a just tough one. 30-10 loss. We'll dive right into it. I'll bring in Dominick here in just a moment after I tell you about Bet Online. We are presented by Bet Online as football is back. And Bet Online is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football at your fingertips with Bet Online's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From week one all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, Bet Online gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, BELIEVE, to get your 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Dom, I don't know if the Bearcats are aware, but the Iowa State game started. It started, they played 60 minutes, and they got just absolutely drubbed. There's no glass half full here this week on this Monday. Pick up the pieces. There's no Russ bringing in the luck stats. They got beat. They got beat up and down the field, and they got shown once again by an entrenched Big 12 team what it means to play football in this conference.
Man, it was wild. We talked about how this is a must-win game coming after the bye, and it was just like what happened. I felt like they had all the right pieces as far as going into it. Well, the way we was talking to players, it was all like they figured it out. They came together. Coaches had a talk. Players had a talk. Like it's one of them bye weeks that you come together after a back-to-back loss, and it was just like, what happened? I was more disappointed for as man. It was opportunities to be made, and they wasn't made. And that what we harped about. You got to capitalize on opportunities. For instance, like passing game, we had open. Emory missed the wide open Wiggins, easy throw, pitch and catch.
That right drive. That was like the second or third throw of the game. And it was a third down too, instantly deflating the team. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off, Dom. Keep going.
No, you're right. I mean, that's the opportunity to start. That's to change the whole minimum of the game. Who knows? We stop Iowa State, come back, score again. That's 14-0. In your homecoming, crowd going nuts. And you know how the nip is when it's going nuts. So it was just blown opportunities. Passing game wasn't well, didn't get over 100. Rushing game, 115. And 2 interceptions being thrown. Turnovers. Getting off the field, only 3 and 13 and third down efficiency. 1 and 3 and fourth down efficiency.
It's just bad across the board. It was like, Dom, I do the final huddle for all Bearcats. I give my 3 kind of big takeaways, big themes of the game. And usually when UC loses, I'll do 2 negative, 2 positive / negatives / focusing on the opponent, what they did well, and 1 for UC. I mean, man, I didn't have anything really positively to say about this team on Saturday. The defensive line played solid at certain points. Dante Corleone, Malik Van. Overall, they had their second most pressure total in terms of total QB pressures in a game this season. So you could say the defensive line did a decent job there, but it wasn't enough. Clearly, they only turned 14 of those pressures, 14 pressures on the day, and turned 2 of those in the sacks. That's just not good enough on the pressure to sack ratio. And you just let a redshirt freshman not necessarily dice you up, but Dom, 9.6 yards per attempt, man. It's a broken record every single week when we talk about this team being unable to stop the big play. They gave up another, I think, 5 or 6 explosive pass plays in this game. You have a guy that I called out last week. I don't like calling players out. I don't like being negative on this show, but I thought it was justified in how poorly Jordan Young has lived up to his number one cornerback status. And he was the worst player on the defense yesterday. He graded out as the worst high snap player on the entire unit. I'll pull up his overall grade here in just a second, but he drops multiple interceptions in the red zone, Dom. That leads to eventual points by Iowa State. He gives up multiple big plays in the passing game. Was just non-existent there. And yeah, I was right. He had 61 snaps, a 52.1 overall grade, a 52.3 grade in coverage. The dude has fallen off by 22 grading points from his season in 2022, where he got his first taste at college football action in the SEC. And he just highlighted, Dom, a secondary that once again got absolutely toasted. Jordan Young gave up 6 catches on 9 targets for 161 yards, 26.8 yards per attempt, man, against your number one corner. Dom, as a receiver yourself, you're just licking your chops as the opposing offense, knowing that their best option and the defensive secondary can give up a quarter of the field per reception. It's just it's unsustainable, and it's impossible to lay this really at the feet of anything but the secondary and their inability to, when the rubber meets the road against the team that's terrible on early downs, is not a very efficient offense, to be able to get them off the field consistently. They couldn't do it, and it was just a head scratcher after head scratcher in a game where Iowa State's offense didn't really play well. They didn't play that well. They were just given short field after short field because of ineptitude, either by the offense or the special teams. And then Rocco Becht and the receiving corps cashed in. I mean, they only had 123 yards on the ground, 3.2 yards per attempt. It was entirely just an untimely blown coverage here, an untimely blown coverage there. And we haven't even talked about the offense yet, Dominick, which, that's just all I got to say about it right now. That's all I got to say before we get to that side of the football. Wrapping up the defense, though, Jordan Young in that secondary, there needs to be a come to Jesus moment. And this is in a game, Dom, where backup cornerback and second cornerback right now, Justin Harris, played well. He played pretty well, made some good plays in the run game. And ultimately, it was not enough, as I believe he had his career high He had a career high 70.7 grade. Justin Harris was the 5th highest graded player on defense for UC. Outside of that, Dom, I noted this in my piece, 5 of the bottom 7 qualified grades, meaning grades that from players that played at least 15 snaps on defense, 5 of the bottom 7 were in the secondary. It's nearly impossible to win in today's type of college football environment when your secondary is playing that bad across the board.
Especially in the Big 12, they're going to come out every day, every week is going to be slinging it. It ain't no power football. It ain't no, we just going to run a triple. No, they're coming out passing. You got to be able to stop the pass. And as far as Young, man, that's tough. When you read out them stats, that's half the passing yards for Iowa State right there. And I know that
picking on him 9 targets, man. They knew exactly who they wanted to go after, and they hit it 66% of the time.
We call that first fish on the line. You don't want that go. You don't want to let that go. So in the huddle, they like, hey, coach, it's third and 5. Let's take it up top. I got them. Matchups. That's what the game's about in the past game, matchups. And Iowa State ate on that matchup. So it's just mind-blowing far as, like you say, up front, they doing what they got to do, putting pressure on the quarterback, trying to cause havoc, trying to cause turnovers, stop the run. And it's a collective group. You gotta have the DBs do what they got to do in the pass game. Make plays, make turnovers, and capitalize, man. It was frustrating to watch, and it's just, you just know they can do better. But you best believe it's gonna be some changes after this week's on.
Yeah, it just feels like at this point it's kind of hard to envision this Brian Brown defense getting executed to the ceiling that he wants to execute it, because when you're bringing that much pressure, when you're bringing that many bodies to the quarterback and leaving your back end exposed a lot of times in man coverage, and they can't lock down in man coverage consistently, this is exactly what you get. You get pressure, but if it doesn't get there in 1.5 to 2.5 seconds, it doesn't matter if you get pressure, because there's a guy streaking wide open down the field, 4 explosive plays, as I mentioned. And then on the flip side, just no explosive plays from this offense. Emory Jones somehow gets a 68 overall grade on PFF from this game. He was the number one graded player on offense. A quarterback who threw for 92 yards and completed just over half of his passes was the number one graded offensive player. That just shows you how bad this team was at everything besides 15 carries for 72 yards on the ground from Emory Jones. That was the only thing consistently working well, Dominick. It was, in my eyes, just a continuation of the inconsistency, the same kind of problems we've seen from Emory Jones. And at this point, I hate to say someone is who they are. I hate to say there's no real path to a higher ceiling here, but it's the 6th year, Dom. I mean, he's approaching 50 games played at the college level. Like, at some point, you are who you are. He's barely 2 or 3 years younger than I am at this point. He's almost 23, 24 years old. Like, 6th year in college, it doesn't seem like we're going to hit that maximization of Emory Jones's skill set, a skill set that maybe this is the max of it, Dom, because multiple points in that game, and you could see the frustration on Scott Satterfield's face after the game. When they schemed up an open receiver, Emory Jones didn't hit D. Wiggins streaking down the sideline, overthrew him by 10 yards. I mean, D. Wiggins was wide open. He had Jamar Chase 7-11 open all over him. Like, it was wide open, and he misses that throw, doesn't hit a key big time throw the rest of the game. In my eyes, there were a couple drops here and there. The receivers didn't get open. The receiving core takes some of this blame as well, along with the offensive line. You don't score 10 points. You don't have that bad about passing game production across the board just because of the quarterback. But all in all, Dom, when the chips are down, there's just been too many times this season when your number one player, as you mentioned, your number one athlete, your number one guy on the offensive side of the ball has to make a play, and Emory Jones has not been able to do it too many times. He's no longer hitting the deep balls that he hit earlier in his career, and if this guy isn't hitting deep passes, he's nowhere to be found throwing the ball. The intermediate and short passing game is not there, and I believe the entire passing game as a total, Dominick, went 6 for 16 on passes of 5+ yards targeting downfield. Not just 15 plus yards through the air, 6 of 16 on targets halfway to the sticks. It's a lack of explosive defense on one side and an inability to create explosive offense on the other. And you get a 30-10 result and a 4th straight loss for the first time since 2017.
Oh man. I was just disappointed just far as, like, I just know they can do better. I know, like you said, it's a 6-year plan, and them the throws I expect you to miss high school. Because in my game, I see it all the time. You got kids wide open, but they don't hit them. But that's high school. But when you get to college, you tuning your stuff. You working on it every day. You tuning your craft. And for your 6 years, it's like them throws you just got to make. It's got to happen. And that's frustrating as an offensive coordinator, as a coach, and as a fan, you know. And it's just, I felt like they tried everything to tailor to him for as, okay, we're going to use his legs, or we're going to use him in the pocket. We're going to use play action. We're going to use this quick game. We're going to use all these things. Each week we see him game planning for him to build around him, and it's still not successful. So that's you got to sit back and scratch your head, like, what's the next move? Because now you don't have a Ben Bryant to challenge him in a quarterback room.
No, like Brady Lichtenberg, what we saw at Brady Lichtenberg, that's not better than what we've seen out of Emory Jones so far. And Brady Lichtenberg in one drive amassed a sub 35 PFF grade. That, I mean, you have to play pretty bad on each second of a snap to get a 35 or below PFF grade. And it was shocking to me, Dom, that the freshman phenom Brady Drogosh is still 3rd on the depth chart. He's still not ready to be that second string guy. And that's got to be more. Not that we've been very negative so far, and I'm not trying to bring it negative as a whole, but I mean, I've been trying to bang the positive drum at points over the past few weeks, but there's nothing really left to bang at this point. And the fact that this staff still hasn't gotten Brady Drogosh ready enough to come in for mop-up duty in that scenario, it's almost like you and I were talking about, do you bench Emory and go play for the future? Is there a future to play for if the guy isn't ready to be the second stringer and is still sitting at 3rd string and down 20 points? It's a troubling scenario for Bearcats fans, Dom, because it doesn't feel like even if you lose this coming week to Baylor, you fall to 2-5 and the season is basically a wrap, needing to go 4-1 down the stretch. Is Drogosh even ready to take on 3 or 4 of those games and still maintain his redshirt ability. Who knows?
And I also think, like, well, what does it hurt? Bring Prater back to the quarterback room and split time at practice with him and see
It
what you
can't
can.
get worse, man. It can't get like 92 passing yards. That's what we saw in a couple games with Evan Prater last year. Like it's just like, where you go. Like, is Evan Prater going to be able to give you more than Jones passing? It is dire times right now for Bearcats football at 2-4 for the first time, 4 losses this early in the season for the first time since 2017. We got to take a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz. We'll tie up all the loose ends on this one, get to some performances that were decent in this game, and get to some more looking forward the rest of the week type of business as Bearcat Blitz rolls along, coming off a 30-10 loss UC is to Iowa State. Be back after this. Bearcat Blitz continues. I'm your host, Russ Heltman, joined by my co-host, Dominick Goodman, former UC wide receiver. Dom, they could use your skill set right now, man, because those wide receivers, we just got done shredding Emory Jones, I think justifiably, but the offensive line played really bad too. Luke Kandra continued to be the only solid, stable, consistent piece on this offensive line week to week. He was the top graded player, but still, I mean, he wasn't very good. 61.9 overall grade. That was 4th on the entire offense by PFF. And nobody else starting wise had a better than 56 overall grade on the offensive line. I mean, and DeAndre Buford, he has been an abject disaster as a transfer from Kentucky, has not played any better this year than he played at Kentucky last year. He was rough yesterday, 54.6 overall grade, 49.1 run blocking. Like Philip Wilder, couple snaps, he was bad. It's rough on this offense right now. One guy though, Dom, as we get to a positive here, that did play decently well, I would say, was Shimon Mater. Didn't grade out super well in terms of his receiving route snap to snap, but ended up scoring a touchdown once again, 3rd touchdown of the year. Was a nice little seam route in the red zone or just outside the red zone. I don't even know if we can call that a red zone touchdown because they were like right on the 20.2 yard line or something, just there outside the 20. But that was the best play of the day for the Bearcats. I would say he was their best player. And Dom, it seems like Barrick Falk maybe getting a little bit more look here in this offense, but Peyton Singletary once again shows his issues in the blocking game, pass blocking wise. He gets a brutal block in the back call to nullify a big gain on a late down, I believe in the 2nd or 3rd quarter. The tight end room is floundering right now, and Shimon Mater is kind of the only thing standing out of that group.
Yeah, just with having 2 great tight ends from last season and trying to stay with that kind of personnel, it helps a lot. Helps a lot in the pass game and the run game. Disguise a lot of schemes and a lot of situations. And not having that other tight end that far can block well and pass game and run game, it's detrimental to the offense and what you're trying to scheme up. So Mater doing his thing. Is he growing as a player like he should be? Like he talked about before, just focusing on doing his job, basically what it is. And he's doing his job and getting better each week. You see the flashes. It just hurts because you don't got that another tight end. Because when you got receivers doing what they're supposed to do, it helps to bring another tight end to play that receiver role, But
right.
It's just got to grow, just got to grow. That's all you can do from there.
And then on the flip side, defensively, as we mentioned, front 7 played okay. Like unless if the front 7 plays okay to good and everybody else plays bad, you're going to get a 20-point loss in terms of they got to play elite at that point to really start to affect the game and will the game their way. But Dorian Jones leads the team in PFF grade. He was very solid across 37 snaps, 83.2 grade. I think that might be a career high for him. I thought Daniel Greshik was very good in this game. 1 sack, had 2 pressures, had another quarterback hurry. He played solid, ended up with a 6.6 grade. And then Dante Corleone was fantastic once again. 4 tackles, had a couple pressures as well on the interior of that defensive line. He was very solid in this game, but just obviously not enough to make this even a respectable matchup. And before we kind of close up shop on this game and get to the Baylor 1-point betting line, Cincinnati somehow still favored to take out this Baylor Bears team, which the Athletic has Cincinnati ranked Dominick now 96th nationally in the entire country, and the Bears sitting at 90 nationally. So a real barn burner, real heavyweight matchup coming up this weekend in the Big 12 as Cincinnati welcomes in Baylor. But Dom, I believe it was 5 or 6 drives, and 3 of them, it was either 2 or 3, but at least 5 to 6 drives started at the UC 35 or further up for Iowa State. 5 of 6 drives. Like, how in college football can anyone expect their defense to adequately stop an opposing offense that's decent to good, or decent, not even decent to good, decent to bad, if you give them that great a field position, drive in and drive out? The punt game was not particularly strong in this game. And the special teams coverage wise, man, I wouldn't even really put it on Mason Fletcher. I'd put it more so on the kickoff return team. They gave up 2 50-plus yard returns on kickoffs to Jalen Noel. Like, you're not only shooting yourself in the foot on offense with penalties, untimely penalties, and on defense penalties, untimely penalties, you're shooting yourself in the foot on special teams. And that's when it just becomes a podcast like we're talking about here, where in all 3 phases of the game, it's just a time as a flat circle continuation, and you can't get off the merry-go-round of madness.
Yeah, I mean, well, all that you just got to get better. I mean, it's not you can say much as a whole. You just got to get better. That's all what it comes down to. Because all phases of the game, at least you get one phase of the game you winning at, and something you can be positive about, and you can just build off of that. But all phases, you gotta build, man. You just gotta get better. That's all I can say, man.
Moving into a look at this week as we continue here on Bearcat Blitz. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He is Dominick Goodman. Thank you all for sticking with us through the toughest time this decade to be a Bearcats football fan. No doubt. Toughest time in 6 years. It's feeling like 2007 when they lost. I think that's the last time they had a streak this long. Yeah, for sure. 2017. Dom, you guys didn't lose 5 games in a row like this in 2007. But I was trying to call you out wrongly there. But 2017, they had a 5-game losing streak in Luke Fickell's first year. And obviously, that's a first year where, like so many first years, and this first year as well, you're going through a change in staff overhaul, a change in roster overhaul, and for Scott Satterfield, a complete jump up in competition. So 2-4. This is not where I expected the Bearcats to be through 6 games. I thought they would be 3-3 overall and firmly in a chance to give themselves some breathing room to make a bowl. But that's not what has happened so far as we approach Baylor coming up. 1-point favorites Cincinnati is over the Baylor Bears. They are now favored, Dom, in 4 of the remaining 6 games. I believe they're only underdogs at Oklahoma State and home against Kansas on Football Power Index. Now, I don't know how much weight I'm going to be putting in the Football Power Index anymore because they haven't been very accurate on this Bearcats team so far, but the computers still believe in UC to have a decent chance to make a bowl game, but it ultimately has to happen this week. You have to beat this Blake Shapen-led Baylor team, a 2-4 Bears team. They're neck and neck with the Bearcats in terms of what they do well and what they don't do well, hence the 1-point spread there on the betting line. But Dom, it seems like you mentioned, last week felt like a must win. This week is a definite must win. The season is over. Stick a fork in it if they drop this game to the Baylor Bears. And I believe they have to go to Oklahoma State or to Houston next. But getting beat by Baylor at home, and then you make your first ever trip to T-Boone Pickett Stadium next week, good luck. Good luck getting any wins out of that scenario. And that brings me to this final point here before we close up shop on Bearcat Blitz. How much of a leash does Emory Jones have? How much of a leash does he have? Because, Dom, it feels like, unfortunately for the scenario UC is in, he has a longer leash from what we've talked about earlier in the episode, because we all know what Brady Lichtenberg is. He's a 3-star recruit coming out of St. John's High School in a couple years ago, has not really elevated his game to even, I would say, compete for a starting job, let alone be thrust into a starting role for the rest of the year. And then your number 1 recruit last year, one of your top recruits last year, who stuck through the transition and stuck through the change to Scott Satterfield, Brady Drogosh, is still your 3rd string quarterback. Maybe that switches this week. Maybe the depth chart gets updated a little bit and Brady gets a pathway to maybe start seeing some playing time. But I think Jones has the same amount of leash in terms of his starting reps this week as he did going into last week, because there's not really a good option behind him, Dom, unfortunately for Bearcats fans.
I mean, I feel like his leash is there till if you can make a bowl game. If you can't make a bowl game, I feel after that, they're going to start developing the next guy, whoever it is, because it's hard to – it's hard. You see, it's just time after time. You see it. You see it. Like, you see what they can do. You can see Enrique, you could be that guy, but it's devastating. But it is what it is. His leash is short until I feel like once they realize they can't make it to a bowl game, or in a situation they're not going to make it to a bowl game, I think that's when it's going to be, all right, it's time to start developing the young guys, and let's get ready for next year.
Going to be very interesting, maybe for a couple more weeks, and then it's tough. It's tough to stay relevant in this league, especially if you fall to 2-5, 2-6, and you're just kind of playing out the string there. Cincinnati taking on the Baylor Bears this weekend. We'll have you covered with a full preview on Thursday as they try to get to 6 wins. ESPN's Football Power Index giving them a 41% chance to get to that bowl eligibility for the rest of the season. And it largely hinges on this game. I would be shocked if that percentage is above 15 to 10% if they lose to Baylor on Saturday. For Dominick Goodman, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz. Thank you all so much for checking us out on your Monday or whatever part of the week you're listening to this show. We'll be back at it to preview Baylor and may have a special guest as well for the second show of the week. You've been listening to Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online.